Hello, friend. If you're here tonight, it's probably because your mind won't rest. Because somewhere beneath the surface, you carry a heaviness you can't quite name, a tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. Maybe you're the person everyone calls when they need help, the one who always says yes, the one who smiles through your own pain because someone else's feels heavier. And maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder why being good feels so exhausting. Tonight, we're going to explore something rarely spoken about, something that lives in the quiet spaces between what we show the world and what we feel inside. We're going to talk about kindness, not the kind that appears in greeting cards or motivational quotes, but the real kind, the complicated kind, the kind that costs something. Have you ever noticed that the kindest people often seem the most tired? That the ones who give the most sometimes have the least left for themselves? There's a reason for that, and it's not because kindness is wrong. It's because kindness, like everything human, casts a shadow. And tonight, as the world grows quiet around you, we're going to look at that shadow together, gently, with compassion, the way you've looked at so many others. Let yourself settle into this moment. Pull the blankets a little closer. Let your breathing slow, because this isn't just philosophy. This is recognition. This is the story of your own heart reflected back to you in the dark. And sometimes, the kindest thing we can do is finally see ourselves clearly. Let's begin.
Part 1. The Beauty of Kindness. Before we walk into the shadows, let's remember the light. Kindness is beautiful. It truly is. It's the hand that reaches out without being asked, the patience that holds space for someone else's storm, the gentle voice that says, "You're not alone." From the moment we're born, we're wired for connection. Mirror neurons fire in our brains when we see someone smile, making us smile too. When someone hurts, something in us hurts. We are not separate beings pretending to care. We are, at our core, deeply interconnected. Psychology calls it empathy. Philosophy calls it compassion. Religion calls it love. But whatever name we give it, the truth is simple. Humans survive through kindness. We always have. Think back to early childhood. When you fell and scraped your knee, someone's soothing voice made the pain easier. When you were afraid of the dark, someone sat with you until morning felt possible again. You learned something fundamental in those moments. Goodness equals safety. Love equals survival. And so you became good. Not because someone forced you, but because being kind felt like coming home. It felt like purpose, like mattering, like belonging to something larger than yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." He understood that our well-being is bound up in the well-being of others, that we are social creatures who find meaning through contribution. When you help someone, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Serotonin floods your system. For a moment, everything feels right. You feel valuable, needed, good. This is not manipulation. This is not weakness. This is the most human thing about you. You learned to read the room before you entered it, to sense when someone needed support without them saying a word, to soften your edges so others felt comfortable, to put aside your needs when someone else's seemed more urgent. And the world rewarded you for it. "You're so kind," they said. "You're so understanding. I don't know what I'd do without you." And those words, they felt like proof of your worth, like evidence that you mattered, that you had a place in this world. So you kept giving.
because kindness made you feel less alone, less afraid, less unsure of your value. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. But here's what no one tells you when you're learning to be good. Every gift requires a giver. Every hand extended must be strong enough to hold weight. Every light that illuminates the darkness burns its own fuel. Kindness heals, but it also has a cost. And sometimes, late at night, when everyone else has gone to sleep, you feel that cost in your bones, in the heaviness behind your eyes, in the way you can't quite remember the last time someone asked how you were doing, not as a formality, but really asked, the way you ask others. This doesn't mean your kindness was wasted. It means it was real. And real things have weight. Real things require something of us. So before we go deeper, let me say this clearly. You are not broken for being kind. You are not naive. You are not weak. You are human. And your capacity for compassion is one of the most beautiful things about you. But beauty, left unprotected, can be consumed by those who don't understand its worth. And that's what we need to talk about next.
Part 2. The Invisible Costs. Let's speak softly about the things that are hard to say out loud. You're tired, not just physically, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that settles into your chest and makes everything feel heavier than it should. You wake up already thinking about what others need. Your first thoughts aren't about your own dreams or desires. They're about who you need to show up for, who might be disappointed if you don't respond quickly enough, what you forgot to do for someone yesterday. This is what psychologists call compassion fatigue. It's what happens when the care you extend outward never quite makes it back to you. When empathy becomes a one-way street and you're always the one traveling away from yourself. Compassion fatigue doesn't announce itself dramatically. It arrives quietly, in the way you stop enjoying things you used to love, in how conversations feel more draining than connecting, in the strange numbness that creeps in where feeling used to live. You're not depressed exactly. You're depleted, like a candle that's been burning in every corner of someone else's darkness, and no one noticed it was running out of wax. And here's where it gets complicated. Saying no feels impossible, because saying no means disappointing someone, and disappointment means they might stop seeing you as good. And if you're not good, what are you? The guilt of setting a boundary can feel worse than the exhaustion of not having one. Someone asks for your time and you have none left, but you say yes anyway because the alternative is watching their face fall, knowing you caused that falling. Carrying that weight feels heavier than just carrying theirs. So you carry both.
This is the mathematics of self-abandonment. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you teach people that your boundaries don't matter, including yourself. The philosopher Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He was talking about how we give our lives away in pieces, never quite choosing ourselves. But here's what he didn't say. We don't give our lives away randomly. We give them to people who've learned they can take without asking. To situations that feel urgent, because everything feels urgent when you're trained to prioritize everyone but yourself. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's not a real person, but she's made of real patterns, real pain. Sarah works full-time, but she's always available to help her sister with childcare. She listens to her best friend's relationship problems for hours every week, even though her friend never asks about Sarah's life. She volunteers at her church, not because she wants to, but because she's afraid of being seen as selfish if she stops.
Sarah hasn't read a book for pleasure in 2 years. She can't remember the last time she said, "I don't want to," about something. When someone asks, "How are you?" she says, "Good, how are you?" before they finish the question.
Because the real answer, "I'm exhausted and I don't know who I am anymore," feels too heavy to say out loud. Sarah has what some psychologists call the helper's wound. It's the unconscious belief that you're only worthy of love when you're useful, that your value is conditional on your service, that resting equals laziness, and boundaries equals selfishness, and your own needs are somehow less legitimate than everyone else's.
Where does this wound come from? Often from childhood. From homes where love was earned through achievement or good behavior, where being easy and helpful kept the peace, where emotional validation was scarce, so you learned to create it through usefulness. Attachment theory helps explain this. If you grew up with inconsistent care, sometimes nurtured, sometimes neglected, you developed what's called an anxious attachment style. You learned to hypervigilate for others' needs, to soothe them preemptively, to make yourself indispensable so they wouldn't leave. Kindness became your survival strategy. Not because you're weak, because you're adaptable, because you learned early that the world is safer when people need you. But here's the cruel irony. The better you become at this, the more you attract people who need exactly that. Have you noticed this pattern? The people who need the most help somehow find you. The ones with boundary issues, the emotional vampires who call only when they're in crisis, the friends who remember you exist when they need something. It's not coincidence, it's psychology. Healthy, balanced people can sense when someone has firm boundaries. They naturally adjust their behavior. But people with poor boundaries, those who take more than they give, they're drawn to kindness like moths to flame. Because you won't stop them.
You'll say yes when others would say no. You'll tolerate behavior others would call out. You'll make excuses for them that you'd never make for yourself. And slowly, quietly, your life becomes full of people who drain you, and empty of people who see you. This is what no one tells you about being the good person. It's lonely at the top of everyone's list, because the relationship is asymmetrical. They come to you with their full weight, and you hold it. But when you're struggling, you don't call them, because you know deep down they can't hold you the way you hold them. So, you stay silent. You keep giving. You tell yourself it's fine. And late at night, when everyone's needs are met and except yours, you lie awake wondering why being good feels so isolating. The answer is painful but important. You've been loving people who can't love you back. Not because they're evil, but because you chose them based on their need for you, not their capacity to see you. You gave them permission to take without reciprocating. And they did, because people will fill whatever space you allow them to fill. This isn't blame. It's architecture. It's understanding the structure you've built around yourself, brick by brick, yes by yes, boundaryless interaction by boundaryless interaction. And the hardest part? You can't quite bring yourself to stop. Because stopping feels like failing, like becoming the kind of person you promised yourself you'd never be. Selfish, cold, uncaring. So you keep going, keep giving, keep holding everyone's pain but your own. Until one day you realize you're not kind because you want to be anymore. You're kind because you don't know how to stop. And that's when kindness becomes a cage. Take a deep breath. Let that truth settle without judgment. You're not being criticized. You're being seen. And sometimes, being seen is the first step towards setting yourself free. Part 3. The shadow of kindness. Now we descend into deeper water, into the parts of kindness we rarely acknowledge. The shadow. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who revolutionized psychology, introduced the concept of the shadow self, the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or hide because they don't fit our self-image. For kind people, the shadow is where the anger lives, the resentment, the buried rage at being taken for granted, the fantasies of telling someone off, the satisfaction you feel, quickly suppressed, when someone who used you finally faces consequences. These feelings terrify you, because good people don't feel angry. Good people don't resent helping others. Good people don't secretly want to be left alone. So you push these feelings down. You smile wider to cover them. You give more to prove they're not real. But Jung would tell you, what you resist persists. What you deny grows stronger in the dark. Your shadow doesn't disappear because you refuse to look at it. It leaks out in passive aggression, in exhaustion that looks like depression, in sudden, disproportionate reactions to minor slights, in mysterious illnesses that force you to rest because you won't choose rest voluntarily. The shadow finds a way. And here's what makes this truly complex. Sometimes kindness itself is the shadow's disguise.
Stay with me here. This is delicate territory. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote extensively about what he called the morality of slaves, the idea that some people use goodness as a weapon, that they make themselves indispensable to control others, that their kindness is actually a subtle form of superiority. Beware of the good and the just, he warned. They crucify those who invent their own virtue. Harsh words, but there's a difficult truth hidden inside them. Sometimes we're kind, not from genuine compassion, but from need. The need to be needed. The need to feel superior by comparison. The need to avoid examining our own pain by staying busy with others. Sometimes we help people to keep them dependent, to ensure they'll keep needing us, to maintain our role as the savior, the helper, the good one. Because if they heal, if they become strong, do they still need us? And if they don't need us, do we still matter? This isn't malicious. It's unconscious. It's the shadow operating beneath your awareness, using your best qualities for its own purposes. Think about it honestly. Have you ever felt a small, secret disappointment when someone solved their own problem without you? Have you ever given advice you knew wouldn't be followed just so you could feel needed again later? Have you ever stayed in a relationship where you were clearly the better person because being needed felt safer than being equal? These aren't accusations. They're invitations to self-awareness. Because the shadow of kindness shows up in how we use virtue to avoid our own vulnerability.
It's easier to fix someone else's life than examine your own. Easier to be the strong one than admit you're breaking. Easier to focus on their problems than face your emptiness. Helping others becomes a kind of emotional bypass surgery, rerouting your pain through someone else's crisis so you never have to look at the wound directly. There's a term in psychology, virtue signaling. It refers to public displays of goodness designed to enhance one's reputation. Social media is full of it. Performative kindness that's really about being seen as kind. But there's a private version too, an internal virtue signaling, where you perform goodness for yourself, where you need to prove to your own consciousness that you're worthy by constantly demonstrating your selflessness. This is where morality becomes a mask. Not for the world, though sometimes that too, but for yourself.
a mask that hides the fear that without your goodness, you're nothing. That underneath the kindness, you're just as selfish, broken, and unworthy as you secretly believe everyone else to be. So you keep the mask on, keep helping, keep giving, keep proving. And the real you, the one with needs, boundaries, and legitimate anger, suffocates quietly beneath it. Nietzsche also wrote, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. As well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind." What if your kindness has become a skin you can't shed, an identity you can't question without feeling like you're dying?
What if the scariest thing isn't being taken advantage of? It's discovering that you've been participating in your own diminishment all along. This is the paradox at the heart of compulsive kindness. It can become a form of control. Control over how others perceive you, control over your own anxiety, control over the chaos of authentic relationship where both people have needs and neither is always right. Real kindness, the kind that comes from wholeness rather than woundedness, asks nothing in return. It gives freely and moves on. It doesn't need witnesses, doesn't keep score, doesn't sacrifice itself to prove a point. But wounded kindness always has a hidden contract. I'll be good if you validate that I'm good. I'll help if you need me. I'll love you if it proves I'm lovable. The difference is subtle but crucial. One is water flowing naturally downhill. The other is water pushed uphill by a pump that never stops running. One is sustainable. The other will eventually burn out. Jung believed that integrating the shadow, acknowledging the parts of ourselves we've rejected, is essential for psychological wholeness. That we can't be truly good until we've accepted that we're also capable of selfishness, anger, and self-preservation. That real kindness emerges not from denying our darkness, but from knowing it well enough that we can choose light anyway. So let me ask you something, and answer honestly, just to yourself, in the privacy of your own heart. What would happen if you stopped being so kind? What would you lose? More importantly, who would you lose? And if the answer makes you afraid, if your value feels contingent on your constant availability, then your kindness isn't freely given. It's a rent payment on your right to exist. And no one should have to pay rent on their own life. The shadow of kindness is real. But seeing it isn't failure. It's the beginning of freedom. Because you can't change what you can't see, and you can't truly choose kindness until you've given yourself permission to be something else. Rest here for a moment. Breathe into the discomfort. This is hard truth, but you're strong enough to hold it. You've been holding everyone else's truth for so long. You can hold your own.
Part 4. Recognizing the patterns. Let's turn toward clarity now, toward recognition, because awareness is the first step to anything resembling freedom. If you recognize yourself in these words, if something uncomfortable has been stirring in your chest, then you already know chronic kindness has become part of your identity. It's not just what you do, it's who you are, or at least who you believe you need to be to deserve love. This identity was built carefully over years. Each time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own, you laid another brick. Each time you swallowed your needs to avoid conflict, you strengthened the walls. Each time you smiled through pain to make someone else comfortable, you reinforced the structure. And now you live inside it, a prison made of your own goodness. But let's look at the blueprint. Let's understand how this was built so you can begin to imagine something different. The fear of disappointing others. This is the foundation. Somewhere in your past, you learned that disappointment equals abandonment, that if people are unhappy with you, they'll leave, and being left feels like annihilation. So you became whatever they needed you to be, flexible, accommodating, understanding beyond reason. You developed what psychologists call hypervigilance, a constant monitoring of others' emotional states so you could adjust yourself preemptively. You learned to read micro-expressions, tone shifts, energy changes, not because you wanted to, because you had to. Because predicting others' needs became a survival skill. Children who grow up in unpredictable environments, where love is conditional or inconsistent, often develop this pattern. It's not personality, it's adaptation. It's a nervous system that learned to stay alert for signs of relational danger. You're not sensitive, you're trained.
And that training follows you into adulthood, into friendships, into romantic relationships, into your workplace. You say yes to projects you don't have time for because disappointing your boss might mean losing your job. You attend social events you dread because missing them might mean losing friends. You tolerate poor treatment because setting a boundary might mean losing the relationship. Loss avoidance becomes your primary motivator, not joy, not growth, not authentic connection, just not being abandoned. And here's the cruelest part. People can sense this desperation, even when you think you're hiding it. They can feel that you need them more than they need you, and that imbalance shapes everything. It turns relationships into hierarchies, where you're always slightly beneath, always slightly in debt, always slightly afraid. This is what attachment theory calls anxious preoccupied attachment. You experience relationships through the lens of anxiety and need. You overextend to maintain connection. You interpret normal boundaries as rejection. You can't quite relax into being wanted. You're always trying to secure the wanting. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't permanent. Attachment styles can change. Neural pathways can be rewired. Patterns learned can be unlearned. The first step is recognizing that your kindness is often fear in disguise. Not all of it. Some of your compassion is genuine, pure, beautiful. But some of it, maybe more than you want to admit, is fear management. It's a strategy to control how others perceive you and thereby control whether they stay or leave. Let's look at the self-talk that maintains this pattern. If I don't help them, no one will. They need me more than I need rest. I should be able to handle this. It's selfish to put myself first. Other people have it worse. I don't want to be the kind of person who says no.
Notice something about these statements? They're all absolute. All or nothing. No nuance. No middle ground. This is how the pattern protects itself, through rigid thinking that makes alternatives unimaginable. But let's challenge them gently. If I don't help them, no one will, assumes you're the only source of support, which removes agency from both them and the universe. It makes you God, which is an exhausting job. They need me more than I need rest, assumes needs can be objectively measured and ranked, and that your needs always lose. It's a rigged equation. I should be able to handle this assumes there's no limit to human capacity, which is simply not true. Even machines need maintenance. Even the ocean has tides. It's selfish to put myself first, assumes self-care and care for others are mutually exclusive, when in truth, you can't pour from an empty cup. Self-preservation isn't selfish, it's sustainability. Other people have it worse, assumes suffering is a competition and only those with maximum pain deserve support, which would invalidate most of human experience, including yours. I don't want to be the kind of person who says no, assumes there's only one kind of good person, and they have no boundaries. But actually, people with healthy boundaries are often the most genuinely kind, because their yes means yes. It's not coerced by fear.
Do you see how the pattern maintains itself through these distorted beliefs? Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches that thoughts create feelings, which drive behaviors, which reinforce thoughts. It's a loop. But loops can be interrupted, not through force, through gentle, persistent awareness. Every time you notice yourself slipping into automatic kindness, the kind that makes you resentful later, pause, just for a second. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? There's no wrong answer, but there is an honest one.
And honesty is the first crack in the pattern. The trauma roots of overgiving run deep. Many kind people experienced emotional neglect or inconsistency in childhood. You learned that love wasn't guaranteed. It had to be earned through performance. Maybe you had a parent who was sometimes warm, sometimes distant. Maybe you had to be the good child to balance out a troubled sibling. Maybe you were praised for being so mature and so helpful, which felt like love, but was actually a burden you were too young to carry. Or maybe your family was just fine, normal. But still, somehow, you absorbed the message that your value was conditional, that who you are naturally isn't quite enough, that you need to add something, helpfulness, agreeableness, selflessness, to be worthy of staying. This isn't about blaming your parents. Most parents did their best with their own unhealed wounds. This is about understanding how the pattern began so you can choose whether it continues. Because here's the truth that might hurt but also liberates. You are not required to maintain the same survival strategies that got you through childhood. What kept you safe at 7 may be suffocating you at 30, or 40, or 50. You're allowed to evolve, to shed skins, to become someone who says no without guilt and yes without resentment. But first, you have to see the pattern clearly, name it, understand it, not to judge it, but to outgrow it. Self-awareness isn't the end of the journey, but it's the map that makes the journey possible. And you're here, right now, in this quiet moment, becoming aware. That's not small, that's revolutionary. So breathe. Feel the weight of recognition without letting it crush you. You're not broken for having these patterns. You're human, and being human means we all carry strategies that once helped but now harm. The question isn't whether you have them, it's whether you're ready to choose something different.
Part 5. The Path to Balance. So what now? How do you unlearn patterns that have been carved into your nervous system over decades? How do you build boundaries without betraying who you are? Gently, slowly, with more compassion for yourself than you've ever managed before. This isn't about becoming cold or selfish. It's about becoming whole, about finding the kind of kindness that doesn't require your diminishment. Let's call it sustainable compassion. The first principle is simple but radical. You cannot give what you don't have. This isn't selfish, it's physics. Emotional energy is real. It depletes, it requires replenishment. You wouldn't expect your phone to run without charging it. Why do you expect that of yourself? So the first step toward balance is acknowledging your own needs as legitimate, not secondary, not less important, equally valid. This might feel uncomfortable at first, selfish even. That discomfort is the pattern trying to protect itself. Notice it. Don't let it stop you. Your needs matter. Say it out loud if you're alone. My needs matter. How does that feel in your body? Strange? Foreign? Wrong? That feeling is information. It tells you how much work there is to do. The second principle, Boundaries are not walls. Many kind people avoid setting boundaries because they confuse them with cruelty. They imagine boundaries as shutting people out, being cold, being mean. But boundaries aren't about keeping people away. They're about creating a sustainable relationship with them. A boundary is simply communicating your limits clearly and kindly. It's saying, I can help you with this, but not that. Or, I'm available on these days, but not those days. Or simply, I need to take care of myself right now. Good people, people who actually respect you, will understand boundaries. They might be disappointed, but they'll adjust because they value the relationship, not just your utility. People who react badly to boundaries, who guilt-trip, manipulate, or withdraw affection, are revealing something important. They were never interested in mutual relationship. They were interested in what you could provide. And that's painful to see, but it's also clarifying. Boundaries help you identify who actually cares about you versus who just benefits from your inability to say no.
Dr. Brené Brown, a research professor who studies vulnerability and shame, says, choose discomfort over resentment. Meaning, the discomfort of setting a boundary is always less damaging than the resentment that builds when you don't. Resentment is poison. It corrodes relationships from the inside. It makes you bitter, tired, and eventually unable to feel genuine warmth toward the people you help. Boundaries prevent resentment. They keep your kindness clean. So how do you start? Start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life at once. Pick one area where you consistently overextend. Maybe it's responding to texts immediately. Maybe it's saying yes to every social invitation. Maybe it's doing favors for a particular person who never reciprocates. Choose one boundary to practice. Just one. Example: I'm going to wait an hour before responding to non-urgent texts. Or, I'm going to say no to the next social event I don't genuinely want to attend. Or, I'm going to tell my friend I can talk for 30 minutes, but not longer. When you set the boundary, notice what happens in your body. The anxiety, the guilt, the fear of disappointing them. Notice it all without judgment. This is the pattern fighting to survive. It will throw every feeling at you to make you retreat back to safety. But you're not in actual danger. You just feel like you are. There's a difference. Use clear, simple language. You don't need to over-explain or justify boundaries. That invites negotiation.
Instead of, I'm so sorry, I'm just really overwhelmed right now and I wish I could help, but I have so much going on and I feel terrible, but I just can't. Try, I'm not available to help with that right now. That's it. Complete sentence, no apology needed. If they ask why, you can say, I need to prioritize my own well-being right now. Still complete, still kind, still firm. Most people will accept this. The ones who don't are showing you who they are. Expect discomfort. Boundaries will feel wrong at first. You'll want to take them back immediately. You'll imagine the other person hating you, abandoning you, telling everyone you're selfish. Most of that won't happen, but the fear will feel real. This is where self-talk becomes crucial. You need to become your own compassionate voice, the one who says, you're allowed to have limits. This is healthy. You're not being mean. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't control how people react to your boundaries.
You can only control whether you honor yourself enough to set them. And here's something beautiful. Over time, boundaries actually improve relationships. They create honesty. They build respect. They ensure that when you say yes, it's meaningful. The people who truly care about you will appreciate your boundaries, even if they're initially disappointed, because they want you healthy, not depleted. Practice quiet kindness. This is kindness that expects nothing, that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't need witnesses or gratitude. When you help someone, do it fully and then release it. Don't track whether they thanked you enough. Don't keep mental accounts of who owes you what. Don't use your kindness as evidence of your worthiness.
Just be kind because you choose to be, and then let it go. This is the hardest form of kindness because it receives no validation, no proof that you're good, no reassurance that you matter. But it's also the most free because it doesn't trap you in the need for reciprocation. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, taught, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid," meaning, care less about how others perceive you. Do what's right without needing applause. Quiet kindness is kindness that doesn't need the world to notice it. It just is. Learn emotional detachment. This doesn't mean not caring. It means not making other people's emotions your responsibility. You can care about someone's pain without fixing it. You can have compassion without carrying their burden. You can witness suffering without absorbing it into your own body. This is a skill. It requires practice. When someone shares a problem, practice saying, "That sounds really hard. I hear you," instead of immediately jumping to solutions or taking it on yourself. Sometimes people don't need you to fix them. They need you to see them. And seeing someone is much less exhausting than trying to save them. Create affirmations that aren't performance-based. Your current self-worth is probably tied to usefulness. Let's create new foundations. Try these even if they feel false at first. I am worthy of love even when I'm not helping anyone. My value is inherent, not earned. I am enough exactly as I am. Rest is not laziness, it's wisdom. No is a complete sentence. I can disappoint people and still be good. Write these somewhere you'll see them. Say them in the mirror. Let them become background music in your mind. Over time, these messages will compete with the old ones, and slowly the balance will shift. Find your why. Why do you want to change this pattern? What would your life look like if you had healthy boundaries and sustainable compassion? Maybe you'd have energy for your own dreams. Maybe you'd attract reciprocal relationships. Maybe you'd feel peaceful instead of exhausted. Maybe you'd discover who you are beneath the role of helper.
Hold that vision lightly. Let it guide you without pressuring you. Change doesn't happen in straight lines. You'll set a boundary and then immediately violate it. You'll have moments of clarity, followed by weeks of old patterns. You'll forget everything you've learned and then remember it again. This is normal. This is how growth works. Be patient with yourself. You're rewiring decades of conditioning. That takes time. But every small choice towards self-preservation is victory. Every no that doesn't destroy you is evidence that you can survive setting limits. And eventually, something shifts. The boundaries that once felt impossible become natural. The guilt that used to drown you becomes a whisper you can acknowledge and move past. You start to notice that the people who stayed after you set boundaries are the ones who actually see you,
Not just what you can do for them, but you. And that feeling, being seen, not for your usefulness, but for your existence. That's what you've been looking for all along. Not more people to help, but people who help you remember you're human too. This is balance, not perfection, just breath, space, the ability to give from fullness rather than fear. And it's available to you, right now, in small choices, in gentle redirections, in the courageous act of mattering to yourself. Take a moment. Feel into what this would be like. To be kind without losing yourself. To care without carrying everything. It's not a betrayal of who you are. It's a return to it.
Part 6. Philosophical Closure. Peace within kindness. We've traveled through difficult territory together tonight, through shadows and patterns, through wounds that masquerade as virtues. And if you're still here, still listening, then something in you is ready. Ready to put down what you've been carrying, ready to rest. Let's come back to the beginning, to the original question. Why does being kind sometimes hurt so much? Because you've been kind from depletion instead of abundance. Because you've been giving to prove your worth instead of expressing your wholeness. Because somewhere along the way, kindness stopped being a choice and became a compulsion. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who ruled Rome while wrestling with philosophy, wrote something powerful in his private journals. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, be one by exhausting yourself, or be one by sacrificing everything, or be one by never disappointing anyone. He said simply, be one. The Stoics understood that true goodness comes from strength, not sacrifice, from internal clarity, not external validation, from choosing virtue because it aligns with your character, not because you're afraid of being seen as bad. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." What if the adversity you need to face isn't out in the world, but in yourself? The adversity of setting a boundary, of saying no, of letting someone be disappointed, of surviving their disappointment and discovering you're still good. That's the proof you need, not more evidence of your kindness, but evidence that your goodness doesn't depend on constant performance. Friedrich Nietzsche, for all his harshness, understood something profound about human nature. He wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Your why for being kind has been fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of worthlessness, fear of being the villain in your own story. But what if you could find a different why? What if you were kind because you've touched your own suffering deeply enough to have genuine compassion for others? Not pity, not obligation, but recognition. The knowing that we're all struggling in our own ways, all trying to make it through this strange, difficult, beautiful experience of being human. That kind of kindness doesn't deplete you, because it doesn't require you to be more than human. It just requires you to be present, honest, willing to offer what you can, when you can, without making it mean everything about your worth. This is what Carl Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, the kind parts and the self-preserving parts, the generous parts and the boundaried parts, the light and the shadow, dancing together instead of at war. You don't have to choose between being kind and being healthy, between caring for others and caring for yourself, between having compassion and having limits. You can be both. You are both. The kindest thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for others, is not lose yourself.
because a depleted, resentful, exhausted version of you helps no one. Not really. You might go through the motions, but the quality of presence isn't there. The genuine warmth gets replaced with mechanical obligation. But when you're rested, when you're honoring your own boundaries, when you've proven to yourself that you matter even when you're not useful, then your kindness becomes something else entirely. It becomes a gift instead of a transaction, a choice instead of a compulsion, an expression of wholeness instead of a desperate attempt to fill an inner void. This is sustainable kindness, the kind that lasts, the kind that doesn't burn out.
And here's what might surprise you. When you become this version of yourself, the people in your life will notice. Some will resist, the ones who benefited from your lack of boundaries. They'll test you, try to guilt you back into old patterns. Let them go. Not with anger, just with clarity. They were never meant to stay. But others, often people you didn't expect, will step forward. They'll say, "I notice you're taking better care of yourself. I'm proud of you." They'll reciprocate in ways they couldn't before, because you're finally giving them space to do so. And you'll realize these are your people, the ones who wanted a relationship, not a service provider. These are the ones worth your energy. There's a Japanese concept called obaikori. It means that people, like flowers, bloom in their own time and in their own way. The cherry, plum, peach, and apricot blossoms don't compete. They simply exist, each beautiful in their own season. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You don't have to bloom constantly. You don't have to prove your worthiness by being available at all times. You can be seasonal. Rest when you need rest. Give when you have abundance. Say no when your roots need tending. This is not selfishness. This is wisdom. The Buddhists have a practice called metta, or loving-kindness meditation. It begins with directing compassion toward yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be at ease. Only after establishing that foundation do you extend it outward to others. Because you cannot offer what you've never given yourself. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let's practice something radical. Let's practice forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for every time you gave too much, for every boundary you didn't set, for every resentment you swallowed, for every time you abandoned yourself to keep someone else. You weren't weak. You were doing your best with the tools you had, with the nervous system you inherited, with the wounds you didn't ask for. And now you know more. You see more clearly. You have new choices available. That doesn't mean you failed before. It means you're evolving now. Growth isn't betrayal. It's becoming. I want you to place one hand on your heart. Feel it beating beneath your palm. That heart has been working its entire existence without you having to earn it. It doesn't stop when you say no. It doesn't judge you for having needs. It just keeps beating, keeps trying, keeps you alive. Your heart knows you're worthy of care. Your body knows you need rest. Your soul knows you're more than what you give. Listen to them. They've been trying to tell you this for years. And when the guilt comes, because it will come, when you set a boundary and immediately want to take it back, when you say no and feel like a terrible person, when you prioritize yourself and hear that old voice saying you're selfish, remember this moment, this quiet conversation in the dark. Remember that kindness without self-preservation is just slow self-destruction dressed in virtue. Remember that you are not a resource to be extracted. You are a person, a whole, complex, worthy person who deserves the same compassion you so freely give to others. The poet Rumi wrote,
Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray.
What do you really love? Beneath the obligation, beneath the fear, beneath the need to prove yourself. Maybe you love kindness, real kindness, the kind that flows naturally from a rested heart, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself or keep score, the kind that's strong enough to say both yes and no with equal grace. Maybe you love connection, but real connection, the kind where both people show up fully, where vulnerability flows in both directions, where love isn't contingent on performance. Maybe you love peace, and peace requires boundaries, requires you to protect your energy as carefully as you protect others' feelings. These aren't contradictions, they're integrations. You can be kind and boundaried, compassionate and self-preserving, giving and receiving, soft and strong. You contain multitudes. You always have. It's time to stop pretending you're one-dimensional, that you're only here to serve, that your complexity is too much, that your needs are a burden. They're not. They're human. They're valid. They're you. And you are enough. Not because of what you give, but because you exist, because you're here, because your life has inherent value that doesn't require constant justification. Let that truth settle into your bones. Let it become the foundation of everything else. I am enough. Even when I'm not helping anyone, even when I'm resting, even when I disappoint someone, even when I choose myself. I am enough. This is not arrogance. It's the quiet recognition of your own humanity. And humanity is always enough, always worthy, always deserving of its own kindness. So as you close your eyes tonight, if you haven't already, let yourself release the weight, the performance, the scorekeeping, the fear that you're not doing enough. You've done enough. You are enough. And tomorrow, when the world asks things of you again, because it will, you can choose differently. Not perfectly, not suddenly, but incrementally. One small boundary at a time. One no that doesn't end the world. One yes that comes from genuine desire instead of obligation. One moment of choosing yourself without guilt. That's all it takes. Small moments, repeated over time, until one day you realize you're different, lighter, more yourself. And the people around you are different too, because you've taught them how to treat you. Not with words, but with boundaries, with consistency, with the radical act of mattering to yourself. This is the path, not back to who you were before you learned to be kind, but forward to who you're becoming. Someone who is kind because they choose to be, not because they're afraid not to be. Someone who gives from overflow, not from depletion. Someone who loves others without losing themselves. That person is already inside you, already emerging, already healing. You're not broken. You never were. You were just carrying too much that wasn't yours to carry. And now you can put it down. Gently, with permission, with peace. Let the darkness hold you tonight, not as a threat, but as rest, as the quiet space between what you were and what you're becoming.
Let your breath slow, your shoulders drop, your mind quiet. You are safe, you are seen, you are enough. And kindness, true kindness, begins with you. Sleep now, friend. You've earned it. Not by what you gave today, but simply by being human, by trying, by listening to these words and letting them touch something true inside you. That's enough. That's always been enough. Rest in that knowing. Let it carry you into dreams. And when you wake tomorrow, you'll be a little freer than you were before. Because you've seen the shadow. And seeing is the beginning of choosing light. Not the false light of performance, but the real light of wholeness. The light that includes your darkness and loves you anyway. The light that says you are allowed to matter. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be more than you give. You are allowed to be human. And that always is enough.